Okay, cool.
All right.
So the
So
question was, what is codifying?
yes, I don't know what that word is. Can you clarify that for me, Zach?
Codifying. Yeah, so not I didn't mean necessarily like in code as in like programming code. I just kind of meant like putting it down on paper, so to speak, and making sure that it's kind of set in place. Codifying like a code as in a set process or a set book that you can go to, you know?
Right. Essentially just like documenting a
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. Something that you can reference and use as your own little manual, I guess.
Yeah.
Software, it's nice because you can kind of put it in there and have it guide you and not have to, just sort of a convenient guidebook, I guess, for the processes in your company, right?
Yeah, what I think it does is it forces people in the organization to first think about their process, because sometimes that hasn't happened yet, and then to stick to them. So when we talk about efficiency and working well as a team, we've thought through a lot of these things as a team, and then we stick to them ourselves so that then other team members will stick to them. So I think that's an important piece of like the efficiency part and the organization part when we're working with ourselves and teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the nice thing about codifying process is not just in like a list, a checklist, and putting it into software. You get the ability to kind of evolve. I don't know. I guess you get two things, right? You get to see it in real time, right? You get to see the rules and the process kind of run in real time. It's not just a checklist that you can go to. It's something that's like actively helping you move work through a process.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also get the chance to evolve. You know, it can evolve with you, I guess, over time. You know, it's easy to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this seems like it's internal, like they're internal processes, but I think a lot of times it will eventually trickle down to the end client. So whatever business that someone is in, because you've done this internally, it then creates more continuity with the client, and in some ways that you don't expect.
Yeah, especially if there's things that you want to happen at those different steps that you're talking about in that checklist. You can't. That's the only real way to like automate that kind of busy work away, is if it is wrapped up in some sort of software framework, right?
Mm.
Yeah. We talk a lot about how companies can get left behind very quickly if they're not investing in things like this in their processes, but also their technology. So even if you are not specifically classified as a technology company, if you're not investing in it, then you can fall behind pretty quickly. So we say things like every company is a software company because of things like this. At the end of the day, you're trying to make things easier for your client, regardless of what business class that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was trying to bring this. I don't know. I'm thinking about McDonald's, and how even when they got started, it almost feels like they were a software company. Like they wanted to produce hamburgers, a quality hamburger, in a repeatable, timely
Mm-hmm.
fashion, right? They wanted a very predictable process in place for their customer, and it was focused on customer experience. And they had all these little microservices, one cook, or I don't know how many cooks, but they had cooking station and fry station. It all kind of came together. It was timed. I don't know. It was like software in motion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, process oriented. It's like the only way to scale, right? I guess
Right.
competitive against, because everyone who is scaling is focusing on their own processes, right?
I think Starbucks comes to mind. Because I use their app often. So while Starbucks is not necessarily like a technology company or a software company, they're a retail fast food coffee company, but they're investing heavily in their technology so that I can quickly get my fancy coffee.
Right, right. They've kind of taken the efficiencies or the way that they think about getting you that cup of coffee in a physical sense. You know, they've done it in their stores. They've designed their stores in a very specific way. The kitchen area, I mean, really the whole stores, they've designed in very specific ways to, you know, move people through them. And, you know, companies like Starbucks that take the time to invest in their software and do it with the same mindset, that kind of iterative approach, right? They're always learning, they're always getting a little bit better. You know, you can really see the effects on the consumer side.
With increased sales.
Yeah.
Everybody needs their coffee. Me specifically. But...
A coincidence that they're from Seattle too. They are from Seattle, right?
Yeah, software hub, right? Tech hub. Yeah, that makes sense.
I know in your households, grocery shopping might not be your core responsibility, but it is for me. And what's interesting for me lately is that there's so many options. So I think that's what has come out of just the internet age, more information, more options. But what's interesting to me is that I'm now choosing a grocery chain or who I'm going to order my groceries by the level of ease with their app on how I can order my groceries and how quickly they deliver to me. So for the most part, the latter part, they all can deliver to me in the time frame that I request, which is super nice. I feel just grateful that I get to have these options, especially since I have 3 kids and taking them to the grocery store is a big deal. But sometimes I will choose, and more often I'm choosing which apps have an easier process. So as an example, Kroger is one grocery store that I shop from. Their internal, like Kroger's app is actually not as intuitive or easy to use as the Instacart app that works with Kroger. So I specifically choose to go to Instacart because their software is better for me to order my groceries. I have probably 4 different grocery stores I could choose from, but I'm choosing the one that has removed the most barriers for me to get my groceries, which are an essential thing that I have to do every week. And I gladly pay extra to do that because of the convenience and the ease of use, really.
Right. And the interesting thing about those types of platforms is they can really only exist, I think, because the companies they are built on top of, like, you know, like Kroger and Publix and Walmart, internally, they have very, you know, it's obvious that those companies have invested in their own software, and not just on the consumer side, but, you know, they've invested in software that helps their staff get the job done internally, right? Stock shelves, keep stock, you know, keep them stocked, and to be able to now, you know, take orders from services like Instacart, you know. It's amazing what software's been able to do, you know, not just on the consumer side, but I think a lot of the consumer stuff that we're seeing now is really, you know, it's because of the software investment that these companies have made on an internal side. You know, they have to be more efficient.
Because grocery stores are they're like retail environments, but because they are investing in their software and investing in their technology, they're able to better compete, sell the same, if not more groceries. They can create different lines of jobs internally. So it's not like they're taking jobs away from anyone else. They're just sort of reallocating that someone doesn't physically have to go to the store and check out with a checkout person. They're just sort of redefining how they can do that internally. But the fact is they're not actually software companies. They're a totally different business class, but they're investing in their software to make it easier for people to do business with them.
Right. Almost become, you know, just modules, their own little software modules in this bigger stack. They I don't know, it's interesting, this transformation specifically, because it's not just software, it's also a mindset, right? Like they're really using technologies that came from, warehousing facilities, because that's the mindset shift. Like you said, these grocery stores are retail locations, but now they're retail and really they're warehouse locations. How many times do you walk around a grocery store and you see it's not just customers in the aisle, it's those pick and pack, workers with the carts. Like it's a warehouse to them. That's how they view that job. And so we have this interesting kind of, two business models coming together. But it's been a mindset shift too, because, the people that run these businesses, have to kind of get on board with this mindset that people aren't always able to come to the location anymore. It's a huge reason why Amazon's been so successful is, obviously the speed in which they can ship things. And, they're undoubtedly a software company, right?
Right. I don't think that the average person sees that though. Like because we are a software company, see their technology and that they are a software company, that they've invested heavily in their technology to sell things. So they're no longer a book company, a media company, an e-commerce company. They're really a software company because they've invested so heavily to make it easier for someone to do business with them.
I think from the get-go too, it was never like intended to be a book company. It was always with the mindset of that was just kind of, I think they ran the numbers and found that that's the lowest hanging fruit in terms of how they could leverage the tech at the time. Just books with all the different too many different books and that to store in any one location. So I think it was the easiest way to shift it over to a warehouse with an online store.
That makes sense because books as an actual product take up a lot of real estate.
No, I try to shop at bookstores, but I just can't find any of the books that I want now. I always have to go to Amazon.
Yeah.
They're not the lightest thing to ship either. So if Amazon doesn't have to deal with the retail cost, which is huge, very expensive. You can put a warehouse. You can build a warehouse very cheap compared to retail. Cost per square footage, and I think those are the numbers Zach's talking about. It's at the time it just made sense.
They also have like the digital delivery platform now. So because they thought about their customer, thought about what would be easier for them, that was it, like delivering the books in a different way. So they invested in their technology and their software to make that happen.
Right. I think the thing that gets me, when I think about Amazon as a software company, it's, they've got the whole AWS thing, but when I think about Amazon, as an e-commerce platform, the fact that you can order something and to know that within 2 minutes, I think it's like within about 90 seconds, a little robot's going to be moving in a warehouse to go, pick up the shelf that has my product on it. Like it just speaks to the level of their software integration and investment, right? Like that's an insane efficiency.
Right. It's kind of like the catering companies that we've worked with our software. Like they are not a software company, but to us, everyone should be, because if they're thinking about their customers, the efficiency for their team, and then ultimately who their clients are, investing in their technology and software to make that easier for them makes sense.
Right. The end result is that, the client can, they have a better experience overall, and that's great. They can pay easier and sign contracts digitally, and obviously that's great for the client experience, but really it's that's the tip of the iceberg. It's the internal use of the software that really helps, our clients, our event planners and other clients using it. they find that, they're able to go from, a sales staff that can only support a handful of sales per week to, now they're using software and they're able to communicate with the inventory department and, the A&R department and billing and all that. And same sales staff can support, double, triple, even quadruple the amount of sales, with the same amount of people. That's only really possible through the effective use of software internally. So yeah, I mean, you are looking to provide a great client experience, and that's generally the end result. But really what you get is, profit margins start to skyrocket because you can do so much more with what you already have.
Right. I think the communication aspect for it is also key, in that you can create a central place with software for your teams to interact, for your systems to interact, because communication gets dropped so often, or becomes difficult. And especially when you're working with multiple people, and in any of the business categories, oftentimes you're working with internal team members, but also external people to the company, and confused people do nothing. So if they're confused about what they need to provide because communication isn't clear or efficient, whatever it is, then you're missing out on opportunities. You're dropping the ball in certain areas because you don't know what you don't know. So if communication isn't there or collaborative, then it makes it hard for teams, but also the clients to feel like they can do business that way.
Right. Yeah, and I guess, go ahead.
No, go for it.
No, I mean, I guess I was just, I think the, communication is a big deal, which I think, like Mylan said, it's the other side of that for us is that we really like to, take that collaborative and consultative approach with the people that we work with, because it is, it's what allows us to really kind of draw out the process, not only that they're currently using, but get to a point where, we've reduced the bottlenecks in that process. But even that, even getting to a more efficient internal, workflow is a process in and of itself. And I think that's the other side of this, is it's not just software. If you really want to set yourself up to, double revenue, and not just revenue, but the margins that come along with that revenue, you really need to kind of go through a mindset shift of, it's not just a, how do I get more sales, right? It's how do I take the process, the workflow, my sales workflow, all of that. How do I take that, find the problems in it, and then put my own software in place so that way my team can be the most efficient, right? You want to reduce the amount of error and the amount of times that your staff or your team doesn't, that they miss steps, because that's what costs you money. That's what costs you your margins, right?
Right. So when we talk with our clients about like setting themselves up for success utilizing software, that's what we're saying, is that you can do more with less. You can focus on your processes. You can increase margin, but also efficiency, and have more organization, have better communication, do more really on a level that you have not currently been doing. So you can really take it to the next level just by focusing on your processes, investing in your software and your technology, things like that.
Right. It's a holistic kind of exercise, I guess, right? Implementation and planning.
Yeah, you also, it's kind of what both you guys are saying. Like if it feels like the process is kind of what emerges when you start to get good at something, right? but that it's kind of siloed off to one person until you put it down and kind of can share it. So it's like we're going through this a little bit with Peter and Josh right now, where like built out the steps into our workflows of what at least we think are good steps in the process to break down problems and turn them into solutions, or create the solutions for them. But it feels like, at least the feedback from them is, it feels like they'd be a lot in the dark and have to kind of develop that process on their own if we don't all continually share what we learn about how to get good at something.
I think there's a lot of organizations out there like that everyone is left up to their own devices, and it creates a lot of inefficiency, zero continuity, and then you don't have anyone really knowing what the processes are, or collaborating to know what works better than something else. What I think is cool about what we do as a team is that if we're departments and you guys are the dev team and I'm operations and marketing, I can actually still insert myself into your process of where marketing needs to join up with the development team. And I think without collaboration, we wouldn't have that at all.
Mm.
Yeah. So clients, that have already been using software, to some degree, express, problems like, they've got different teams like you just described, but they're using their own black boxes, right? They're using their own project management system or their own contact management system, or, different systems that don't talk to each other, right? And so there's so much efficiency that can be gained, not just in, going from paper to software, but going from all of these little mini black box solutions to a cohesive experience, right? And that's kind of what you're getting at.
Networking those processes together.
Mm.
It opens up all the little pieces of communication that can happen when it's in one place.
Right.
Which I don't think that people think about. Like, I don't even think that some people know that they're missing that. That because the software does it on its own. Like when you have a cohesive system, instead of all these little black boxes of software, you don't actually know what you're missing until the system is thinking for you and doing things automatically that you didn't know needed to be done, but would make you and your team better.
Right.
Well, good talk, guys. This was fun.
Yeah, it was.